This was just a contract for money.
I don't care about the money anymore. I want you.
Marry me before midnight, and I will pay you $500,000. Nia Bennett stared at the tall white man beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Cross Hotel ballroom, certain she had misunderstood him. Less than an hour earlier, the 30-year-old black woman had been serving champagne at Adrian Cross's engagement celebration, while silently calculating how many extra shifts she would need before the bank seized her mother's home in Baltimore. Now the engagement had collapsed, the intended bride had disappeared, and one of Chicago's most feared and influential men was offering Nia his wedding ring. Adrian Cross was 38, sharply dressed, and famous for treating emotion like an expensive weakness. Business magazines called him the head of Cross Holdings, but older families in Chicago knew the deeper history. The Cross organization had grown from a secretive underworld dynasty into a network of shipping companies, hotels, private security firms, and real estate investments. Adrian had spent years moving its operations toward legitimate business, yet people still lowered their voices when they called him the Mafia Boss. He showed no embarrassment as stunned guests whispered beyond the closed ballroom doors. "This is not a joke," Adrian said. "I need a legal wife for 99 days. You need money. We can solve each other's problems." Nia tightened her grip on the foreclosure notice hidden inside her apron pocket. Her mother, Denise, had undergone surgery 6 months earlier, and the medical expenses had consumed nearly everything they had saved. The bank had given them 10 days to pay the overdue balance before beginning the final foreclosure process. Nia had learned that wealthy men rarely offered rescue without purchasing something in return. "Why me?" she asked. Adrian glanced at the clock. It was 11:23. Under the terms of his late grandfather's trust, Adrian had to be legally married before midnight on his 38th birthday, or temporary control of the Cross Foundation would pass to his uncle, Malcolm. The marriage had to last at least 99 days. The foundation operated 3 community clinics, funded housing assistance, and controlled hundreds of millions of dollars in charitable assets. Adrian believed Malcolm intended to dismantle those programs, dismiss employees, and transfer the most valuable properties into private companies. "Because you are available, intelligent, and not afraid to tell me when I am wrong," Adrian answered. Nia had spoken to him only once that evening, after noticing that his intended bride, Vanessa Cole, cared more about the press cameras than the ceremony. Nia had warned him that Vanessa seemed terrified after reading a message on her phone. Minutes later, Vanessa left through a private exit without explanation. Adrian's attorney, Victor Hale, placed a contract on a nearby table. Victor explained that he had already arranged a marriage license and a licensed officiant for Adrian and Vanessa. The original application could not simply be transferred, but a senior county official had remained available because the trust deadline and ceremony had been planned months earlier. With Vanessa's consent formally withdrawn and Nia's identity verified, emergency amendments could be completed electronically before the officiant performed the ceremony. Even with those preparations, they had only minutes. The payment was real, $100,000 upon signing and $400,000 after the 99th day. It was enough to save Denise's home, clear her medical bills, and allow Nia to leave hotel work behind. Yet the contract felt less like salvation than a beautifully wrapped cage. Separate bedrooms, required public appearances, complete discretion. No claim on Adrian's property, no emotional expectations. At the end of 99 days, they would divorce and return to their separate lives. "You make marriage sound like a business meeting," Nia said. "Business meetings are more reliable than love," Adrian replied. For one unguarded second, something behind his gray eyes shifted, revealing an old wound he quickly concealed. Nia remembered her mother's trembling voice that morning and the red notice taped to their front door. She also remembered the promise she had made never to surrender her dignity for anyone's money. "I will do it," she said, "but I have one condition." Adrian offered her a fountain pen. "You have 31 minutes. Nia read every page while attorneys waited and society guests speculated beyond the doors. Then she wrote an additional clause on the final sheet. During the 99 days, Adrian Cross would have no authority over his wife's family, career, appearance, private choices, or freedom to leave. Victor reviewed the sentence, confirmed that it did not invalidate the agreement, and placed the amended documents before Adrian. With 7 minutes remaining, Nia signed. Adrian signed after her. Their vows were brief, legal, and witnessed by Victor, the hotel manager, and the officiant. At 11:59, Nia Bennett became Mrs. Adrian Cross. Only after the official record was transmitted did Adrian fully consider her amendment. His gaze lifted slowly from the page. Nia removed her server's name tag and placed it beside the contract. "You paid for a wife, Mr. Cross," she said calmly. "You did not buy a woman." For the first time that evening, the cold mafia boss smiled. By sunrise, Nia was riding through Chicago in the back seat of Adrian's black sedan, still wearing the simple black dress a hotel manager had found after the ceremony. Her ring felt heavier than it looked. Adrian sat across from her, answering messages with the same calm focus he had shown while marrying a woman he barely knew. When the car passed beyond the city and turned through the iron gates of the Cross estate, Nia saw a limestone mansion overlooking Lake Michigan. It was larger than her entire apartment building, yet its dark windows made it feel strangely empty. A line of employees waited inside the entrance hall. Victor introduced her as Mrs. Cross, but the silence that followed made it clear everyone already knew how suddenly she had acquired the name. Mrs. Whitmore, the severe house manager, stepped forward with a garment bag and a printed schedule. A stylist would arrive at 9. A media advisor would teach Nia how to speak at public events. At noon, she would be fitted for a new wardrobe. Nia read the page, folded it once, and handed it to Adrian. "I agreed to attend your events. I did not agree to become someone else." Mrs. Whitmore appeared horrified, but Adrian only studied his new wife. "The Cross family receives constant public attention. Presentation matters." "Then present me as I am." Nia touched the natural curls pinned above her shoulders. "Your amendment protects your appearance and private choices," Adrian acknowledged. "It does," she said. "I wrote it because I knew you would test it." Something close to admiration passed across his face before he instructed Mrs. Whitmore to cancel the stylist and let Nia choose her own clothes. Her bedroom was in the east wing, nearly 100 feet from Adrian's suite, exactly as the contract required. Fresh flowers had been placed beside a closet filled with designer dresses in colors Nia never wore. She ignored them, changed into the jeans and sweater Victor had collected from her apartment, and called her mother. Nia explained only that she had accepted a temporary position with generous advance pay. She could not yet bring herself to say that she had married a stranger before midnight. After confirming that the $100,000 advance had cleared, she paid the overdue mortgage balance and Denise's remaining medical bills. Relief weakened her knees. For the first time in months, her mother would not wake fearing foreclosure. That afternoon, Adrian found Nia in the kitchen making grilled cheese instead of waiting for the lunch prepared by his chef. "We have staff," he said. "I have hands," she replied. She offered him half, expecting him to refuse. To her surprise, he sat at the counter and ate in silence. It was the first meal they shared without witnesses. The peaceful moment ended when Victor entered with a tablet. Photographs from the ceremony had reached every major entertainment site, and reporters were gathering outside the gates. Worse, Malcolm had requested an emergency meeting of the foundation board. Adrian told Nia she would attend beside him that evening. That was not a request, she observed. The contract requires public appearances. It also requires reasonable notice. She held his gaze until he corrected himself. Will you attend with me? Nia agreed, not because he commanded it, but because he had recognized her right to choose. As she left the kitchen, she heard Adrian speaking to Victor in the hallway. Do not confuse cooperation with affection, Adrian said in his familiar, emotionless voice. This marriage is only a transaction, and on the 99th day, it ends. Nia continued walking before either man could see her. She had never expected love from Adrian Cross, yet hearing him reduce her sacrifice to a business arrangement hurt more than it should have. That evening, Nia entered the Cross Foundation gala wearing a deep burgundy gown she had selected herself. She kept her curls loose around her shoulders and wore the pearl earrings Denise had given her at college graduation. Adrian waited at the bottom of the staircase in a black tuxedo. His gaze paused when he saw her, and for one unguarded second, he forgot to speak. Is something wrong? Nia asked. No, he replied. You look prepared. It was such an Adrian compliment that she almost smiled. The gala occupied the grand ballroom of a downtown hotel, where wealthy donors gathered beneath golden chandeliers, while reporters waited behind velvet ropes. Adrian placed his hand near Nia's back without touching her, and quietly explained the names of influential guests. She remembered every one. Their entrance immediately drew attention. Some guests offered polite congratulations, while others examined Nia as though she were an unexpected addition to an expensive collection. Celeste Monroe approached them in a silver gown, her expression elegant and carefully controlled. She had belonged to Adrian's social circle for years, and many people had assumed she would eventually become his wife. Your marriage surprised everyone, Celeste said, especially those of us who thought Adrian valued tradition. Nia recognized the insult beneath the pleasant tone. Perhaps he decided honesty was more valuable. Celeste's smile tightened. During dinner, Malcolm called an emergency board vote challenging Adrian's control. He argued that the marriage had been arranged merely to satisfy the trust, and suggested that Nia knew nothing about the organization she now represented. Adrian began to rise, but Nia rested 2 fingers on the table beside his hand, signaling that she could answer for herself. She calmly explained that the foundation operated 3 neighborhood clinics, funded 12 college scholarships, and supported housing assistance for working families. She had read the annual report during the drive downtown, and she asked Malcolm why administrative spending had increased by 18% in the division he supervised, while funding for the South Side Clinic had been reduced. The ballroom became silent. Malcolm gave no direct answer. An elderly board member asked what Nia believed the foundation should prioritize. Programs should be judged by the people they help, not by how impressive they sound at a gala, she replied. My mother nearly lost her home while recovering from surgery. Families do not need another speech. They need institutions that keep their promises. The vote proceeded, and Adrian retained control by a clear majority. Afterward, reporters surrounded the newlyweds. When one asked whether Nia felt unprepared to enter Adrian's world, he answered before she could speak. My wife understood the foundation's finances better than several people who have served on its board for years. His public praise startled her more than Malcolm's hostility. In the car home, Adrian admitted that she had protected both the foundation and his position. Nia reminded him that she had protected families who depended on its clinics. He looked at her for a long moment. You are not what I expected. Neither are you, she said, remembering the way he had defended her before the cameras. Back at the mansion, Mrs. Whitmore delivered an envelope found among archived invitations after news of the marriage appeared. Inside was a faded photograph taken outside the Cross estate 20 years earlier. A younger Nia stood beside Denise near the garden entrance, while Adrian watched from a distant window. On the back, someone had written 5 words. Ask her what her mother stole. Nia placed the photograph on the library desk. Adrian stood across from her, his expression colder than it had been during the board meeting. Your mother worked here, he said. Nia refused to look away. 20 years ago, for 11 months, she managed records for your father's charitable accounts. Adrian remembered seeing Nia in the garden, but had never known her name. Why did you not tell me? Because my mother's employment had nothing to do with our arrangement until I entered this house again. The answer was true, but incomplete. Nia finally admitted that Denise had been accused of stealing confidential documents from Thomas Cross. The accusation destroyed her professional reputation. Denise insisted that she had taken nothing. She had discovered irregular transfers connected to the foundation and tried to warn Adrian's father. But someone removed the records before he could review them. 3 days later, Denise was dismissed and ordered never to contact the family again. Adrian had been 18 then, grieving his father's death and trusting whatever Malcolm told him. He had always believed Denise sold private files to a competitor. My mother lost every reference she had, Nia said. She spent years rebuilding her life while your family treated her name like something shameful. Adrian opened a locked cabinet and removed an old personnel folder. Denise's termination document carried Malcolm's signature, not Thomas's. For the first time, uncertainty replaced the belief Adrian had carried for 2 decades. Did you marry me to investigate my family? I married you because my mother was about to lose her home, Nia answered. But when I walked through these doors, I realized I might finally learn the truth. Adrian could have accused her of deception. Instead, he asked what she remembered. Nia described a room on the west side of the mansion where Thomas stored handwritten correspondence. The room had been sealed after his death. Mrs. Whitmore found the original key in a storage box. Dust covered the furniture inside, but the shelves remained orderly. Nearly 2 hours passed before Nia discovered a false wooden panel behind a desk drawer. Inside lay letters tied with a blue ribbon. One envelope bore Denise Bennett's name. Thomas thanked Denise for warning him that charitable funds were being redirected through a consulting company. He promised to meet her the following Monday and correct the records. At the bottom, he had written that only 3 people knew the access code: Thomas, Denise, and Malcolm. Adrian sat motionless as an old certainty collapsed beneath him. Nia did not celebrate being proven right. She saw only the pain of a son realizing that someone he trusted might have deceived him. This does not prove who moved the money, she said gently, but it proves my mother told the truth. Adrian looked at her with unfamiliar vulnerability. I believed the wrong person for 20 years. As they prepared to leave, another page slipped from the envelope. It contained account numbers and a note from Thomas stating that additional evidence was inside the lake house safe. The Cross Lake House had supposedly been sold by Malcolm 19 years earlier. Victor traced the property records and discovered that it had never truly left the family. Malcolm transferred it through 2 companies before placing it under a private holding firm he controlled. Adrian could have sent his security team to search the property, but Nia insisted on accompanying him. My mother lost 20 years to this secret. I will not wait while someone else decides what I am allowed to know. They drove nearly 2 hours north along the Lake Michigan shoreline. The weathered cedar house stood beyond a narrow road lined with bare trees. Inside, old furniture remained covered with white sheets, and a family photograph rested above the fireplace. Nia noticed Adrian avoiding it. He admitted that his parents brought him there every summer until his mother died. Afterward, Thomas buried himself in work, and Adrian learned that grief was easier to manage when converted into schedules, numbers, and rules. "That is why you trust contracts," Nia said softly. "Paper does not leave without warning." Adrian looked at her, surprised by how easily she understood him. They found the safe behind a framed lake map, but the combination lock would not open. Nia rearranged the numbers from Thomas's letter according to the date on the family photograph. The door clicked. Inside were bank statements, consulting agreements, and notes showing that foundation money had passed through a company connected to Malcolm. There was also a signed statement from Thomas confirming that Denise brought the suspicious transfers to his attention. Nia pressed the document against her chest, her composure finally breaking. "This gives my mother her name back." Adrian wanted to comfort her, but he stopped before crossing the boundary she had written into their agreement. Nia noticed his hesitation and reached for his hand herself. They stood in the dusty study without speaking, no longer feeling like strangers performing a marriage for other people. On the drive home, Adrian asked how she had spent the advance. Nia told him she paid the overdue mortgage and medical bills, and placed the remainder in Denise's account. She bought nothing for herself. Adrian admitted that the foundation once paid college tuition for the children of longtime employees, but Malcolm ended the program after taking control of its finances. "You could restart it," Nia said, "not for publicity, because it was right." Adrian promised to review the program. It was the first promise he made to her that had not been written into a contract. Weeks passed as Victor organized an independent audit. The investigation required patience because Malcolm's transfers had moved through several companies over many years. During that time, Nia and Adrian developed quiet routines. They ate grilled cheese in the kitchen after long meetings. She challenged his habit of answering every disagreement with an order. He listened when she explained why the foundation's housing program failed applicants who worked irregular hours. Adrian began inviting clinic directors and community representatives into meetings that had once been limited to cross executives. Nia saw that his coldness was not cruelty, but armor built from grief and betrayal. Adrian saw that her independence was not defiance for its own sake, but a dignity she had spent her life protecting. One rainy evening, he told her that the mansion had never felt like a home after his parents died. Nia told him about growing up above Denise's small alteration shop, where the sound of a sewing machine often continued past midnight. Their eyes met across the kitchen counter, and the silence between them became warm and uncertain. "Nia," Adrian began. Before he could finish, Victor entered with urgent news. Malcolm had learned about the audit and was preparing a public statement. Later that night, Nia returned to the library to make a copy of Thomas's declaration for her mother. Adrian found her beside the machine with the document in her hand. The tenderness disappeared from his face. "He promised there would be no more hidden motives." Nia held up the copy. "I promised not to hide my motives, and I am not hiding this. My mother spent 20 years being called dishonest. She deserves to read these words." Adrian said the original documents belonged to the estate and contained confidential information. "There it is again," Nia replied. "You decide who deserves the truth because your name is printed on the folder." The argument followed them into his study. Nia accused him of treating people like pieces he could move whenever he felt threatened. Adrian answered that control had kept his family and employees safe for 20 years. "Control kept you alone," she said quietly. The words stopped him. Victor turned on the television. Malcolm was speaking outside the foundation offices, claiming that Denise stole confidential records years earlier, and that her daughter entered Adrian's life to gain access to family assets. Reporters were already repeating the accusations. Nia watched her mother's name become a headline again. Adrian placed the original evidence in her hands. Take everything, release whatever you need. Victor warned that publishing the records could expose the Cross family's financial failures and damage Adrian's position. Adrian did not hesitate. Her mother's reputation is not worth less than mine. By noon the next day, the Foundation released Thomas's declaration and enough verified records to establish Denise's honesty without compromising the continuing audit. Adrian personally accepted responsibility on behalf of his family and requested that Malcolm be temporarily suspended from financial decisions, pending an independent review. Denise called Nia in tears after former colleagues began sending apologies. For the first time since Nia was 10, her mother heard someone from the Cross family say publicly that she had told the truth. That evening, Nia found Adrian alone beside the library window. You could lose the board, she said. Perhaps. And part of the foundation. Perhaps. He turned toward her. I spent my life protecting a name. You reminded me that a name has no value if it is protected by someone else's silence. Nia returned Thomas's letter, but Adrian folded it and placed it back in her palm. It belongs with your mother. The gesture dissolved the last of her anger. She admitted that she should have told him before copying the document. Adrian apologized for assuming betrayal before asking why she had done it. Their hands remained together around the letter. The distance required by their contract suddenly felt artificial. Adrian asked with unusual uncertainty whether he could kiss her. Nia answered by stepping closer. The kiss was gentle and brief, carrying no demand, yet it changed the meaning of every quiet moment they had shared. When they separated, Adrian admitted that he no longer knew which parts of their marriage were pretend. Maybe that is something we decide together, Nia said. For several weeks it seemed possible that they could build something real. Adrian waited for her at breakfast. Nia joined him at community meetings and watched him reopen the employee scholarship program under independent supervision. They argued, apologized, and learned how to make decisions without turning every difference into a contest. Adrian began imagining the mansion after the contract ended and realized he no longer feared losing control of the trust as much as he feared losing the woman who had brought warmth into his silent home. Then, while reviewing financial records Victor provided for the audit, Nia discovered a separate bank assignment bearing Adrian's signature. It was dated 3 days before their wedding. Adrian Cross had purchased Denise's overdue mortgage before he ever offered Nia the contract. She carried the document into his study and placed it on his desk. You owned my mother's debt before you asked me to marry you. Adrian looked at the date and did not deny it. 3 days before the gala, his security division had reviewed every temporary employee scheduled to enter the private ballroom. Nia's name led them to Denise, whose old dismissal file contained inconsistencies. Adrian purchased the overdue mortgage through a Cross financial company to prevent the bank from completing foreclosure while he investigated the connection. Victor then arranged for Nia to serve in the private ballroom so Adrian could speak with her after the celebration. You knew I was desperate, Nia said. You stood there with a contract while holding the one thing that could destroy my family. Adrian insisted that he delayed the foreclosure rather than causing it and never intended to take the house. But you let me believe the bank controlled our future. You turned my fear into leverage. Adrian admitted that he operated as he always had, gathering information, controlling risk, and selecting the fastest solution. After Vanessa disappeared and the deadline approached, he used what he knew about Nia's finances. Was any part of our meeting accidental? Nia asked. Your warning about Vanessa was unexpected, he said. Everything after that was calculated. Nia stepped back as though the room had become unfamiliar. Every meaningful moment now carried a shadow. Was any part of this real? Adrian rose from his chair. The plan was real. The contract was calculated. What I feel for you was neither. He told her that he had begun recognizing her footsteps in the hallway, waiting for her opinions at breakfast, and imagining a future that did not end on the 99th day. I love you, Nia, he said, the confession stripped of his usual certainty. I did not intend to, but I do. Tears gathered in her eyes, not because she doubted his emotion, but because she wanted to believe it. Love does not erase how you brought me here. Adrian offered to cancel the contract and transfer the house to Denise without conditions. Nia refused. Another gift controlled by him could not restore what his deception had taken. She would remain through the foundation vote and complete the 99 days because she had given her word. After that, she would leave. She would keep only the $100,000 advance already used for the mortgage and medical bills. She formally rejected the remaining $400,000. The following weeks passed beneath careful silence. The independent auditors traced additional transfers and interviewed employees. Nia and Adrian attended necessary public events and helped restore Denise's professional record. But their private breakfasts ended. Adrian never entered Nia's side of the mansion without permission. He wanted to apologize every day, yet understood that repeated words could become another form of pressure. During the final week, Victor discovered the reason Vanessa fled the engagement. Malcolm had sent her financial records showing that one of her family's companies was close to bankruptcy. He promised to rescue the company if she abandoned Adrian before midnight, and threatened to release the records if she refused. Vanessa provided the message and admitted what happened. She apologized for leaving without explanation and agreed to cooperate with the audit. The revelation completed the pattern. Malcolm had tried to make Adrian miss the trust deadline, discredit Denise, and use the resulting chaos to seize the foundation. On the 98th evening, Nia packed the same 2 suitcases she had brought from her apartment. Adrian found her wedding ring resting beside the contract in the library. Beneath it was a handwritten note. Tomorrow I will keep my promise and set us both free. On the morning of the 99th day, Adrian entered the foundation boardroom without Nia beside him. The audit had confirmed that Malcolm directed charitable money into consulting companies he controlled, but he still held enough family voting shares to block immediate reforms and remove Adrian. Before the meeting, Malcolm offered a private agreement. If Adrian publicly declared that Denise and Nia had manipulated him, Malcolm would surrender his shares and allow Adrian to retain complete control of the Cross organization. The scandal would disappear, the family name would remain protected, and Adrian would keep everything he had spent his life building. All he had to do was sacrifice the women who had already been blamed once. 99 days earlier, Adrian might have accepted and called it strategy. Now he understood that power preserved through a lie was another kind of failure. When the board assembled, he rejected Malcolm's offer and released the complete audit to the directors and appropriate authorities. He confirmed Denise's honesty, explained Vanessa's message, and acknowledged his own decision to purchase the Bennett mortgage and use Nia's financial distress during their negotiation. Victor advised him that the admission could damage his reputation, but Adrian refused to protect himself with another carefully edited truth. The board suspended Malcolm from every foundation position, while the financial findings underwent formal review. Adrian also agreed to surrender his exclusive authority over the organization. A new independent board, including clinic directors, employees, and community representatives, would oversee its programs. For the first time, the Cross Foundation would serve its communities without belonging to the ambitions of one powerful family. That afternoon, Victor delivered 2 documents to Nia. The first released her from every remaining obligation, effective immediately. The second confirmed that Adrian had paid and canceled the remaining mortgage balance. Ownership of the house belonged entirely to Denise, and no repayment, appearance, or relationship was required. Adrian included no letter asking Nia to return. She found him waiting in the mansion's entrance hall as Mrs. Whitmore placed her suitcases beside the door. He looked tired but made no attempt to stand between her and the exit. "The board announced what you did," Nia said. "You gave up control." It was never supposed to belong to one man. She asked whether he expected his sacrifice to change her decision. Adrian answered honestly. "Part of me hoped it would. That is why I will not ask you to stay today. If my apology only matters when it brings you back, then it is still a transaction." He handed her the ring she had left in the library. Nia closed his fingers around it. "Keep it. It belongs to the promise we made for money." Pain crossed his face, but he nodded and stepped aside. Nia walked through the doors without looking back until she reached the waiting car. Adrian remained beneath the stone archway, honoring the freedom he had once promised only on paper. At 11:59 that night, their agreement expired. Nia sat in her mother's restored home while Adrian stood alone in the silent kitchen, beside 2 untouched grilled cheese sandwiches. When the clock reached midnight, he folded the contract, placed it in a drawer, and accepted that loving Nia meant allowing day 100 to begin without her. Adrian arrived at the foundation office before sunrise. He restored the scholarship program but placed it under independent management so no cross-family member could use it for influence. He converted his private ownership of the Southside Clinic building into a permanent community trust. There were no reporters and no announcement carrying his name. Across the city, Nia sat at Denise's kitchen table reading the public record of the board meeting. Adrian had not merely exposed Malcolm. He had admitted how he used the mortgage, knowing the confession could damage his standing. Denise reminded her that forgiveness did not require forgetting. "But fear should not make the decision for you either," her mother said. Nia understood that Adrian's deception was real, but so was his transformation. The man she married would have protected power at any cost. The man who let her leave had surrendered control without knowing whether she would return. That afternoon, Nia visited the foundation office. She watched Adrian listen as a clinic director challenged one of his proposals. Instead of ending the discussion with an order, he asked what he had overlooked and changed the plan. He noticed Nia through the glass wall, but did not interrupt the meeting or send anyone to bring her inside. When he finally approached, he stopped several feet away. "Are you here about your mother's records?" "No," Nia said. "I came to see whether yesterday was a grand gesture or the beginning of something real." Adrian accepted the doubt without defending himself. He told her he had begun working with a counselor to understand why he confused control with protection. He had also ordered his security division never to investigate anyone in his personal life without clear cause and consent. "I cannot ask you to trust me because I changed for one day," he said. "I can only give you the freedom to watch what I do next." Nia did not return to the mansion. Instead, she invited Adrian to meet her for coffee in a small neighborhood cafe, with no drivers waiting outside and no assistants arranging the table. One conversation became several. Over the following year, Adrian met Denise properly, volunteered at foundation events without taking the stage, and learned to apologize without adding an explanation. Malcolm's financial misconduct continued through a formal legal review, and Adrian allowed the evidence to follow the proper process, instead of using family influence to determine the outcome. Vanessa publicly corrected the false stories surrounding her departure, and then left Chicago to rebuild her life away from the Cross family. Nia reopened her own career plans and joined a nonprofit housing organization, using her experience to help families facing foreclosure. Adrian never attempted to direct her choices. He earned no special access to her life because of his money or name. Their relationship grew slowly, no longer protected or restricted by legal language. He showed up when he promised. He listened when she said no. He disagreed without turning disagreement into control. Nia learned that forgiveness was not a single decision, but a series of careful choices supported by evidence. Adrian learned that love was not proven by preventing someone from leaving. It was proven by becoming a person they could freely choose to return to. 1 year after the contract ended, Adrian invited Nia to the Cross Hotel. He did not reserve the ballroom or alert the press. He took her to the quiet kitchen where they had shared their first simple meal. On the counter sat 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and a blank sheet of paper. There were no attorneys, cameras, financial terms, or deadlines. Only one sentence appeared at the top. No deadline, no conditions, and no answer unless it is freely yours. Adrian placed the same ring between them. "I loved you before I understood how to love you well," he said. "I am asking for the chance to keep learning, but the choice will always be yours." Nia looked at the man who once believed everything valuable could be secured through control. He had not become gentle because she rescued him. He had chosen honesty when it cost him power, accepted accountability when it damaged his name, and respected her freedom when it broke his heart. She picked up the pen and wrote beneath his sentence, "Yes, but this time we write our future together." Adrian smiled as she returned the ring to her finger. Their first marriage had lasted 99 days because money and necessity held it together. Their real marriage began without a price, an expiration date, or a promise written by anyone else. It began because Adrian Cross had finally learned that love could never be owned, and Nia Bennett knew she was choosing him as an equal.